There is a fish in the Southern Ocean right now that has no business being alive, and I don't mean that in the dramatic YouTube way where everything is impossible and unbelievable. I mean it in the very literal, biological sense. This animal is missing something that every vertebrate on Earth has had for roughly 400 million years, something so fundamental that without it, the general scientific consensus is that you die. At this point, I'm sure you have already guessed it. You see, in nearly every vertebrate on this planet, dogs, sharks, birds, humans, blood is red because hemoglobin in red blood cells binds oxygen molecules and carries them to every tissue in the body. It's not a nice to have, it's the entire system. Without it, your cells stop getting oxygen, your organs shut down, and you will die. But this fish has none of it. No hemoglobin, no red blood cells, nothing. Meat. The Antarctic icefish, a vertebrate that somehow deleted one of the most fundamental systems in animal biology and survived. It evolved completely transparent blood, free of red blood cells and hemoglobin. It's like its hemoglobin is just gone. If you cut this animal open, what comes out isn't dark red, it's ghostly white, milky, almost see-through, like someone removed all the color from the blood and forgot to put it back. And the fish is fine, completely fine. If I may add, it's out there right now, drifting through water so cold it would kill most vertebrates in minutes, hunting, surviving, reproducing, with blood that should be biologically non-functional. So how does anything inside this animal still work? And honestly, why in the world did it lose hemoglobin in the first place? Before we continue, my name is Sam, and we just launched this channel for people who love ocean science and mysteries. The goal is simple. Tell the stories no one really talks about. If you want to support us and help us make better videos, consider subscribing. It's free, and it really helps more than you think. Alright, let's get back to the story. To fully understand how this fish actually came to be like this, we first need to understand where it stays, the Southern Ocean. You may have heard of it before, but if you haven't, then just imagine a place where the water temperature around Antarctica sits at around minus 1.9 degrees Celsius. So the ocean itself is just floating there at minus 1.9 degrees Celsius, held back from freezing solid purely because salt lowers the freezing point of water, which means the Southern Ocean is essentially existing in a state of perpetual, almost frozen, all the time. And this is where the icefish decided to live. It didn't even choose the surface or the warmer parts. It chose to live right in the middle of the coldest, most extreme marine environment on the planet. Now, you'd think that an ocean that cold would make it even harder for a fish with no hemoglobin to survive. So why exactly did losing hemoglobin not kill it immediately? You see, cold water holds significantly more dissolved oxygen than warm water, meaning the colder it gets, the more oxygen it can carry. So, the Southern Ocean, sitting at nearly minus 2 degrees Celsius, is almost absurdly rich in dissolved oxygen compared to warmer tropical seas, which meant that when the icefish lost its hemoglobin, it didn't immediately suffocate. Without hemoglobin, oxygen transport shifted to a diffusion-based system with dissolved oxygen absorbed directly into the plasma. So it found a workaround. That's good but not great, because scientists eventually discovered something even stranger. The icefish didn't just lose hemoglobin, it lost red blood cells entirely. Not reduced, not weakened, gone. As if evolution had reached into the circulatory system and deleted one of the most ancient features of vertebrate life. Even with all its compensatory adaptations, the icefish still has less than 10% of the oxygen-carrying capacity of normal fish blood. 10%. So yes, it technically solved the hemoglobin problem. In the same way you technically solve a broken car engine by pushing the car. It works. But now something else has to work much, much harder to make up the difference. And that question, what exactly is doing that work? And honestly, this is where it starts to get weird for me. But unbelievably, oxygen isn't even the biggest problem. Before this fish can worry about transporting oxygen, it has to stop itself from freezing solid. At minus 1.9 degrees Celsius, the Southern Ocean is constantly threatening to form ice crystals inside the body of any biological life that enters it. If you know anything about ice crystals, you can probably see why this fish should be extinct. You see, ice crystals don't just make things cold. At the microscopic level, they are physically destructive. They have edges, and they expand, and worse, they rupture cell membranes the way broken glass ruptures anything soft. That is why freezing destroys biological tissue. It's also why your frostbitten finger turns black. The ice itself becomes the weapon, forming inside the very cells it's supposed to be leaving intact. So how does a fish survive, permanently submerged in water that's trying to crystallize its own body fluids? The answer is simply antifreeze glycoproteins. Those are proteins that circulate through the icefish's bloodstream, binding to microscopic ice crystals the moment they begin to form, physically blocking them from growing before they can spread. And this is not a passive system. The icefish is not simply resistant to freezing. It is actively fighting ice formation every single second of its existence. Those antifreeze proteins are running a continuous molecular battle inside the fish's body at all times, locating new crystals, latching onto them and stopping them before they become lethal. So the moment those proteins stop working, the fish starts freezing from the inside out. It has been living like that, without a break, for millions of years. Every second, every heartbeat, every movement, every meal, a continuous war against the water surrounding it. Imagine waking up every second of every day and actively fighting the water you live in just to maintain the basic structural integrity of your own cells. That's what this fish does, and I don't know about you, but that sounds exhausting. But this constant fight adds another problem to it. Because now we have an animal with barely any functional oxygen transport in its blood, and an animal spending enormous biological energy fighting off internal freezing constantly. Both of these things require infrastructure. Both of these things require compensation. So what exactly did the icefish build to compensate? The answer is a bigger heart. But their hearts were not just big, it also had dramatically increased stroke volume relative to body size, along with enhanced vascular systems designed to push massive volumes of thin, oxygen-poor plasma through the body fast enough to actually sustain life. Now, if you are thinking, just take a normal heart and enlarge it, you are wrong. Because their hearts are structurally enlarged with high cardiac output, increased blood volume, enlarged vessel lumens and low blood viscosity. Simply put, their entire circulatory system was redesigned from the ground up to compensate for blood that barely works. But here's the thing, even a heart that large, pumping that hard, still can't fully compensate for blood carrying less than 10% of normal oxygen capacity. So what fills the gap? Well, to fill this gap, the icefish started doing something that I couldn't quite wrap my head around. It started breathing through its skin. It will absorb oxygen directly through their thin, scaleless skin via cutaneous respiration. So the oxygen is now diffusing from the surrounding water straight through the skin and into the bloodstream, partially bypassing the need for blood transport altogether. And honestly, that's understandable. But the next thing it does, simply because it doesn't have hemoglobin, is disturbing. But let's just keep track of where we are. This fish has no hemoglobin. It compensates with a massively enlarged heart. It compensates further by breathing through its skin. It fights off internal freezing every second with antifreeze proteins, and at the cellular level it evolved an exceptionally high mitochondrial density in its heart and skeletal muscle to squeeze every last molecule of oxygen out of plasma that was never designed to carry it efficiently. That is kind of cool because every single system in its body is compensating for one catastrophic mutation. And that's when scientists realized something remarkable. Evolution never actually solved the problem. The icefish is not a perfect design, it's a collection of biological workarounds stacked on top of each other. A living animal built around a mistake. And the result is a fish that, drifting ghost pale through black Antarctic water, looks almost peaceful if you love ghostly looking animals. But to some, it is the opposite of peaceful. It is one of the most biologically expensive animals on the planet, just to keep running for one more hour. Most animals spend energy living. The icefish spends energy preventing itself from dying, which is kind of impressive and also, honestly, a little bit tragic. Because there is one thing the icefish didn't really account for. Everything we've talked about, the antifreeze proteins, the transparent blood, the enormous heart, the skin breathing, all of it was built for one very specific set of conditions. Water that stays at minus 1.9 degrees Celsius, an ocean that stays frozen enough to remain oxygen-rich, a world that stays cold. And honestly, that's great after all the icefish is stenothermal. Their physiological performance is locked into a low, narrow temperature window, meaning that they didn't just adapt to cold water, they became so precisely calibrated to it that they can't function outside it. But unfortunately, that ocean is warming. In fact, scientists studying icefish evolution concluded that the increasing temperature of the Southern Ocean is now the greatest threat to the survival of this entire group of fish. In their own words, In a tragic twist of fate, the development of polar climatic conditions that shaped the radiation of Antarctic icefish is now reversing. So why is warming so catastrophic for this animal? Well, that's because every single adaptation the icefish has depends on the cold to function. You see, warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen, which means the diffusion-based oxygen transport the icefish relies on, the system that replaced hemoglobin, becomes less effective. Also, the antifreeze proteins is evolved for near-freezing temperatures, and the enormous heart was calibrated for the viscosity of near-frozen plasma. And finally, the skin respiration works because the surrounding water is dense with oxygen. So once all that temperature is changed, then all of it starts to fail. Researchers have found that while icefish have some resilience to short-term temperature changes, their ability to swim, feed, and reproduce would be severely affected by a rise of even a few degrees, likely leading to extinction of the species. For the icefish, the margin between existing and not existing is a few degrees. The same specialization that made the icefish survive the impossible made it incapable of surviving the gradual. Evolution built the perfect fish for a world that no longer exists. It can handle minus 1.9 degrees Celsius water. It cannot handle minus 0.9 degrees Celsius water. Evolution optimized it so completely for one world that there is nowhere left to go when that world changes. So picture it. Somewhere in the Southern Ocean right now, an icefish is drifting through water that sits just below freezing. Its blood is nearly transparent. Its heart is pumping at a rate no normal fish could sustain. Antifreeze proteins are running through its plasma continuously, catching ice crystals one molecule at a time. Oxygen is moving through its skin from the water around it. 16 species of this animal exist, spread across the Southern Ocean, all of them white-blooded, all of them built around the same catastrophic mutation, all of them running the same impossible biology every second of every day, and the water around them is warming. Just a fraction of a degree here, a fraction there, and the icefish is noticing it because, frankly, it has no room not to notice. It built itself perfectly for one world. And that world is quietly, gradually, indifferently leaving it behind. And honestly, that should scare you because the icefish isn't just an animal, it isn't just a bizarre evolutionary experiment drifting through black Antarctic water with white blood and a heart 3 sizes too large. It's a signal. Antarctic marine ecosystems are considered particularly sensitive to change precisely because every organism in them evolved for cold and stable conditions that have remained consistent for millions of years. Nothing down there has a backup plan. And the icefish, with its impossibly narrow tolerance for temperature change, sits at the extreme end of that fragility, which means when something goes wrong in the Southern Ocean, the icefish is the first to show it. Scientists call this being a sentinel species, an animal so precisely calibrated to its environment that any shift in that environment shows up in its biology immediately, like a thermometer, except the thermometer is a living vertebrate with transparent blood that took 14 million years to build, and right now, that thermometer is reading very high. Researchers noted that global warming will have its biggest effect in the most vulnerable areas of the world, and Antarctica is at the top of that list. By studying the anatomy and physiology of species like the icefish, scientists say we can draw conclusions for other life on the planet, including ourselves. And the icefish, this ghost-pale, white-blooded, skin-breathing, antifreeze-running, biological impossibility, is the thing telling us that destabilization has already begun. So what happens if we lose it? We don't just lose a species, we lose one of the most extraordinary evolutionary experiments ever produced by a vertebrate. An animal that survived by abandoning the very thing vertebrates depend on most. An animal that spent millions of years becoming perfectly adapted to one world. A world that is now disappearing. Somewhere in the Southern Ocean, an icefish is still drifting through near-freezing water. Its blood remains transparent, its heart remains oversized. Antifreeze proteins are still hunting ice crystals molecule by molecule. For now, everything still works. But the world that made those adaptations possible is changing. And the tragic irony is that after surviving millions of years of extreme cold, the thing that may finally defeat the icefish is a few degrees of warmth.